Hello. Um, I am deeply, deeply nerdy. And that is a song that I'm learning how to play from a composer who composes music specifically for flutes. And I was playing my Irish whistle. But, and this composer's like super awesome. His name is Herman Beeftink. And he really does write like, excuse me, really beautiful flute music. So I was just having a little bit of fun, like learning that song. But and the really nice thing is it's in the key of D, so it works perfectly for my little Irish whistle. But today, because lately I've been playing and doing like PvE, PvP, collaborations, not really taking things seriously and just doing whatever, etc., etc. I wanted to do a bit of like concentrating on lore today. And so I want and concentrating on, you know, Elden Ring and lore and not real life and, you know, my feelings about things and la 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 la. So so that's what I wanted to do today. The other thing that I wanted to do is, so I remember telling people about like this build that I wanted to make. I have a couple of different ideas for just making interesting builds, which, you know, I don't know if they're going to be any good in PvP or PvE or this or that or whatever, but just that they are kind of lore accurate builds. One of them is that I want to do like an interesting build with stances, and I would use like for my talismans I would use carrion talismans, so like I would use one of these, and I would use the carrion filigree if I have it somewhere. I think I did have it once upon a time and I gave it away. Maybe I can go get it. But I think EG might be dead already. But, yeah. More lore, less whiskey, exactly. Aha! EG is alive. I'm refusing. So I did Ronnie's ending this time, and I found out that there's actually a way that you can do Ronnie's ending without having Blythe and EG fight each other and without having to kill either of them. So Blythe and EG are both still alive and well in my game, and I've already done Ronnie's ending. So that's really cool.
Oh, there you are. Good of you to drop by. Have you heard? Lady Rani has departed on her journey along the dark path of Imperium, from Rena's Rise, as she calls it. It would not have been possible without you. As Lady Rani's war counselor, and moreover, her childhood warden, I express my deepest gratitude. You, and only you, were Lady Rani's true champion.
Yes, so what I wanted to do is, hopefully if I don't speak to him again, he'll just stay alive. Is do a build like this. So use Rolana's, and then the carrion filigree, wherever it is. That'll help me, I don't know, spend less mana using my abilities. And then I would do this and this. It was still a light build, but I have to be like attire appropriate or whatever. So I want to see if there's a way that I can make like a moon. I hate the way it looks. I think if I put on any carrion anything, it'll put me in medium. Yeah. But if I maybe okay. Ooh, that puts me up to a light or a medium load. How do we feel about this? It's okay, I guess. I feel like the gloves could just be different. But they can't. If I change to anything else, I go to medium. Medium load. Alright, so we'll just leave it like this. But anyway, so, this would be the build. And that gives me like a really interesting buff. Maybe instead of the carrion filigree, I should do the thing that gives me successive attack bonus. And I wonder if... Where's Rogier's gloves? Do I have them? I wonder if they're... I'm gonna teleport far away and never come back, because I don't want EG to be dead. Yeah, the blue silver set. Let me see. And it would leave me on a light load. What about the trousers? Ooh. I think if I use Rolana's legs, it'll put me on a... Oh, yay! It leaves me on a light load. Hey. Okay, what's about the gloves? No, that'll put me on medium. But the reason I was thinking Rogier's gloves is because with Rogier's gloves, it gives you a boost to using abilities or whatever. So the other thing I want to do with this build is say goodbye to all my Mikula stuff. I don't know, we might be able to leave some Mikula stuff on there, but the main thing would be using sorceries. But I think actually if I equip a thingy my bubby, it will put me into a medium load. So instead of dual wielding straight swords, let's always only use one or the other. And I wonder if that will... Hey, okay, that made me lighter. I still kind of want the Rogier's gloves though. Let me see if I have them in my chest. I do that, I put stuff in the chest for some reason. I may have given... Oops. I may have given all my Rogier stuff away. And I know that I have him in this world still. So it's just a matter of him just keeling over. Hi, Metal Fox and... Yes, Rivu made it for me. Rivu is wonderful. And we love Rivu. We stan Rivu. Okay, sir, can you die so I can have your stuff, please? You're not using it. Let's see, past time. We'll go to the next morning. We'll go to the next morning again. We'll go to the next morning again. Sometimes you have to like reload the area. He's still here. What will make him expire? Rivu is the best. There we go. Okay, so the gloves are ugly, but this should make us do more damage with this build in particular. Okay, so let's make this build spells. Let's give this build some spares. So we are a build of Night and Flame. So because we are Night and Flame, I want to use Night sorceries and Moon sorceries and Flame. So let's start there. We're going to use we're going to use Night Shard. We're going to use Night Comet. Then we're going to probably use one or two gravity sorceries as well, just because I'm min-maxing a little bit. Okay, shut up, don't judge me. And then I might have fun with like a teleport spell or something. But we'll see. We will see. The teleport spell is really only good for like if you're doing like a carrion knight build. It's good for mixing up the spacing when you are doing like the carrion melee spells. So I've got those. I want my moon spell and my moon ground pound. And then I want for the sake of having it, because I really like it, I want this spell. Then I want my one flame incantation. I'm just going to use one, and it's going to take up 2 slots, and it's going to be this. And then, yeah, and then I don't really have room for a Mikola spell, so I think what I might do is remove this and put a Mikola spell there instead. And if I remember correctly, my favorite Mikola spell takes 2 slots, so we're gonna not use that this time. We'll just use this one. And then I kind of always like rocking a heal, so I'm probably gonna run around with a heal. So I know this is not the best interpretation of a build that is perfectly knight and flame. You know what? Fuck it. We will go hard lore. I will stick with the lore theme, and I will get rid of, because this is just for fun. And let's see. Instead of this heal, is there another night or fire thing? You know what? There's this. We can use flame grant me strength. I guess. Or yeah. Or have a heal. Or we could just add another sorcery. I think maybe adding another sorcery makes more sense. What do you guys think? I want to be one of the only people on the planet actually using the lucidity spell. Well, lucidity, it just cures sleep and madness, right? Yeah. It does. I think for funsies, we might just go with Miriam's Vanishing. Just for funsies. So I think what I'll do is put it here. Because I really don't, with this particular build, I don't see how anything else would be any more useful except maybe this. We're gonna do it. Okay. And then here we will use this. And this is our build. So, This is our build. Let's go. Let's see. What things do I still need? I know there are things that I still need to do. But I guess I really wanted to point out some things with the lore. So I think I'm finally gonna do that. Let's start up here. So the first thing I want for you all to do, in order for everything that I'm about to guide you through to make more sense, the first thing that I want for you to do is to imagine that the world is complete and level. And what I mean by that is, so we know that the world right now spirals and it goes like this, and then it elevates to the plateau, and then elevates to the mountain. And this area, and like Fada Marzula and the Land of Shadow, and all of the land underneath, like the Underdark, are all displaced. So imagine that everything is where it's supposed to be. Like Deeproot Depths is actually still part of Lanedale, so it's the Eternal City of Lanedale. Noxtella Eternal City is still here where it belongs. And one of the interesting things that kind of, okay, we'll go over that in a minute. But yeah, so this area is still where it belongs. What else? And then Fada Marzula and this area are all level and attached to the lands between. Okay, so now we have one continent, much more naturally shaped, all kind of level. There are still hills and mountains and stuff, but all of this ridiculous, underground rivers and earth being twisted and thrust upward and all this other stuff, none of that exists. The first thing that I want you to look at, to give you some perspective on what the fuck I'm talking about here, is, do you remember when we were in Fada Marzula and I was showing you how some of the trees are petrified? Well, what I want for you to pay attention to here is, in loads of different places around the world, underground and here in the north, we can see that there are these petrified trees, and it's petrified and fossilized. So it's made of stone now, and this is felled. It's a felled, petrified tree. There's more over there, and there's a lot of them, and sometimes they look like stone. They're so big that you just kind of look at it as like a feature of the land. But look, there's more over there. Then there's this one. And then there's this massive one right here. We are in a forest. We are in a really big forest. But like most of the trees here in this forest were petrified. This is, I think, evidence of what happened with the eclipse. The eclipse occurred and petrified loads of forests. So when this happened, it didn't only happen here in the north. It happened in other places in the world too. Namely, places that are now underground. And I mean to show you what I'm talking about. If we look around here, you can see the same tree stumps, drained of color, petrified, all different sizes, and down here underground. The other thing that you'll notice is the different kinds of rock formations down here. Okay, so the first one that we're noticing is this gray rock that is kind of smooth, which means it's weathered to the elements, including water and all this other stuff. So this rock is kind of smooth. But then you have this over here, this black volcanic rock. This black volcanic rock doesn't always necessarily mean that it came from a volcano, especially in situations like the ones that we know probably occurred in the lands between, that resulted in the Rao ruins that we're running around now being immersed in liquid hot magma. Okay? Now what I want you to pay really close attention to is how many different rock formations we have in this condensed area. There's this smooth gray rock here, which means it's weathered to the elements, which means weather, like literally water, wind, all that kind of stuff. Then we have this black volcanic rock, which is like immersing things inside of it. And then we have a weird moment here where those two things are interspersed from the rock that used to be above to now this volcanic rock or liquid magma that has cooled in place. And then we have another completely different kind of rock formation down here. So these are three different rock formations all merged in together. Now the first thing that this would suggest in the real world, the first thing that this would tell me, without even being able to take a chunk off and study it, is that these are different ages in history. So the way that rock formations work is rocks are really good at okay, so think about it this way. Think about the ground outside of your house right now. And think about how when you walk outside and you just look at the ground, you'll see dirt, grass, bushes, you know, and evidence of heavy traffic, be it detritus or like, you know, rubbish or dog shit, you know, all of this stuff. You see all kinds of stuff on the ground. Over hundreds of years, there's so much stuff on the ground that now there's a layer of stuff on the ground. And over thousands of years, there's so much dirt and other things that have layered on top of that, that a lot of that is buried and condensed underneath. So what dirt and soil is mostly comprised of is granulated minerals and a lot of organic decomposed tissue and matter. And so that's what gives dirt that distinct flavor, that distinct smell. I'm not saying that distinct flavor like I go out and eat dirt, but we've all been children, we've all had dirt in our mouths. And that's why soil is so nutrient dense for animals like worms and for organisms like plants and fungi and the micro world, because death lives in the soil and death is nutrient rich. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because the remarkable thing about rocks is that, or rather the earth, is that all of this stuff becomes captured in a time capsule. And as time passes, all this organic tissue eventually becomes fossilized. It takes about 10,000 years for organic tissue to fossilize. And when that occurs, which it also occurs in the earth, all of that nutrient dense soil and everything like that, all that organic tissue, all of the minerals dispersed within it that make up the soil that was once on the surface, now buried under layers and layers and layers and layers of more rock and detritus and all of that other stuff, becomes fossilized. It becomes stone. And the really cool thing about it is that it starts trapping information inside the stone. We can now see what animals lived there, what worms lived there, what kind of plant material was there, how it decomposed. We can see other animals that die there, their bones get trapped in the soil, and under certain circumstances, even soft tissues can be preserved or petrified or really well preserved when they get like air sealed by landslides or mudslides or just like dying in the perfect conditions in the perfect area, to the extent that we've been able to do CAT scans on hadrosaurids. I think in particular it was a Lambeosaurus. And we were able to not only see the texture of its skin, but also the chromatophores like in the skin that make it really obvious what color this dinosaur was. But we were also able to identify its soft tissues on the inside so that we can tell what kind of complex digestive system it had, and also that it ate crabs. Maybe on purpose, maybe accidentally. Maybe it was while it was eating, foraging for grasses and stuff. It was just pulling crabs up, accidentally, and also eating them. But the point of that would be determining that animals that we thought were 100% herbivorous may actually have purposefully eaten crabs for the sake of nutrients like calcium from their shells, protein, and this may be incidental, an incidental part of their diet. Like they do this regularly, but they're not doing it on purpose, but it's a good thing that they're doing it because they get these extra nutrients. Anyway, the point of me going on and on and on about this is that rocks tell us all of this. And when in the game of Elden Ring, I keep hearing this phrase, the wisdom of stone, my instincts are to think about fossils, to think about how time is captured in stone and how we can measure that, and we can study the past just by studying the actual rock itself, because it tells us everything about the environment. It tells us about what kind of things were in the air, what kind of things were alive back then, what kind of, was there grass, was there this, was there that. We know so much just by studying the rock layers. So okay, so I want to show you some of what I'm talking about. In real life, if we look at, I just want pictures. In real life, if we look at rocks, we can see stuff like this. Especially if you're looking at like a mountainside or like the side of a plateau, etc., you can start to see different colors in the layers of rock. And what this tells you is what that rock is comprised of at that particular time. So now we know what's in the atmosphere, all kinds of stuff. When it comes to dinosaurs, there's something called the KT boundary, which on one side of the KT boundary, we knew there were tons and tons and tons of dinosaurs. On the other side of the KT boundary, just suddenly there wasn't. And the KT boundary is like, I think it's like 7 inches of layer. It's a layer that's about 7 inches thick, which denotes like thousands of years of sediment in the air. And it's an alien substance to Earth. So we know that it was created by a giant meteor having stricken the Earth and vaporizing, and all this dust from that meteor going into the atmosphere and slowly fossilizing in a layer of rock around the whole entire world. There is no place on Earth that we are aware of where the KT boundary is not present. And like I said, we have tons of, paleobiology on one side of it that's not present on the other side, which means that all of those animals died in that time period. So that is probably the most dramatic version of this phenomena that I'm trying to describe to you. Time periods that you can see layered in rock, and how important that is, especially when we see different kinds of rock that change dramatically over, like from one period to another. So as you can see here, there's like tons of clay, and as you go further down, there's all this like, I don't know, it looks to me like some kind of turquoise or like jade, etc. And then it goes down to what looks like limestone, and then it goes down further to, different other kinds of earth sediment. And this tells us all kinds of different things about the world that we're in. So the reason why I'm walking you through this is because now you understand the framework by which I am looking at the stone earth layers in Elden Ring. The first thing that I can see from this rock right here is that it's not comprised of a lot of different fragmented stone bodies. So when we take stone of different kinds and we look at it under the microscope, you can see like on the molecular level, these atoms of this stone, they. Here, let me see if I can show you another example of what I'm talking about. Because if I try to just explain this, it's probably going to be confusing. But with visual aid, maybe not. So let's look at the Okay, so graphite is a mineral. And if you look at what we want to look at is the way that it binds with itself. Um, that's what I'm trying to show you. I might have to word this differently in order for you to understand what I'm talking about. Let me look at a periodic table really quick. And let's do cadmium. This is a good example. I'm trying to sort out like how to explain this to let's see. One sec, let me go ahead and do this. It's gonna take me a couple of minutes here because I'm also having to do a little bit of research. Gold. Hi, Revu. I'm trying to explain I'm trying to explain a lot of things. But I'm trying to do a little bit of research so I can better explain the way that certain rocks are comprised of. I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing a good example of what I'm trying to explain. Anyway, I'm just going to continue explaining it, and the visual aids aren't really probably going to help make my case very well, but But anyway, what I'm trying to say is like depending on the kind of rock that you're looking at, you will see certain things like the way the rock binds with itself on a molecular level. So you'll see different amounts of porousness depending on what kind of rock it is. So with this limestone, for example, it's pretty porous. And so lots of different elements can kind of leak their way in, including air and water and other things like that. And so then, depending on what kind of rock we're looking at, it depends on the way that rock has the potential to weather and whether or not it condenses, depending on how much weight is on top of it, whether it holds fossils really well, whether it does any number of different things, tra la 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 la. So when you're looking at Elden Ring, and you show me something like this, the first thing that I think is whatever kind of stone that is up there, on the molecular level, its larger composite, like the way it looks when it's bigger, is a reflection of the way it binds to itself, the molecules of that particular kind of stone. So whatever shape it takes is always going to be like rigid and angular. So the reason why that stone is like that is because on the molecular level, it's comprised of tiny little rectangular type shapes, right? So you have that. Well, now we're looking at this. Whatever this was, it's not weathering the same way. It's not breaking down in pebbles like this kind of rock is. Instead, it's like smooth. So there are two ways that can happen. It can happen if the rock was melted down, like this volcanic rock here, and then thawed, and so was at one point like this amorphous goo that is now frozen in time in a particular shape, looking like that, and also having submerged a whole civilization within it. Or the other way that something like that can happen is if this particular stone here isn't actual stone at all, but is layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of fossilized sediment. So now when I'm looking at this rock face, this cliff face, and I'm seeing the different kinds of stones, they are marking different ages, different periods, different times. And the rock up here looks like the newest rock to me. This shiny, fragmented, like, kind of, I would call that like basalt or something maybe. And then underneath it looks like this is all fossilized soil, basically. This is layers and layers and layers of sedimentation. And then this over here, the black rock, being volcanic rock. So this singular cliff face that I've been looking at is giving me so much information. Now my next thing to try to piece together what happened here, why are the rocks layered like this? What can this tell me about what's going on here with its juxtaposition with a giant artificial structure? So the first thing is, because of the way that there are two different kinds of stone that structure is kind of melding inside of, my conclusion is that one of those kinds of stone is natural, like that this structure is caught in time, and that we would be able to measure that with one of those kinds of stone with which it's submerged in, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Or do I just sound like I'm yapping? My point is, one of these kinds of stones is natural, and the other kind of stone is very much not natural. And if you look up here, you can see clearly, like, there's right there, you can see a clear boundary in the stone. So, whereas in the real world, that would denote two separate atmospheric ages, two separate, you know, like a distinct change in the time period. Okay. But then all of a sudden we have this black rock here, which is volcanic. And it even looks volcanic. It even looks like it was seeping away. What I'm trying to suggest is because of where we see this, like right there, just volcanic magma suddenly peeking through that stone, it seems very intentional that, like, the game creators understood that these different rocks look differently, and that you would be able to glean different information from them. The rock that I'm standing on here, this rock is very weird. If you come over here and look at it, it's like bent sideways. It's like flowing like a river. But it's not volcanic. It wasn't molten stone that was like flopped over like this. If you look at the way it's structured, all these rigid edges, on the molecular level, this is how this material binds to itself in these shapes. So this stone is different than that stone, is different than that stone, is different than that stone, and they're all telling a story. Do you know what the story is? Do you know what it is? Do you know? We can see some of it happening over there too. And then they built inside of it. I think that over there that we're looking at, I think that might be a tree stump. And I got this idea from Scum Mage Infer. I think that this whole thing that we're stood on is a tree stump. It even looks like a tree stump. It even has like these different things coming off of it. Now Scum is the person who pointed me in the direction of thinking this. You can even see like a big structure here. And this is what's going to support my idea. Or it's actually Scum's idea. If you look here and you see just look how this looks. It looks like a tree stump. You have a little thing here, blah, blah, blah. Now look at this. This is a tree stump. We know it's a tree stump. Has a little thing here, blah, blah, blah. Look what it looks like. Okay, so, and then you look here. And then you look here. What's the difference between them? This one isn't petrified. This one hasn't fossilized. It's not turned to stone. This one has. And the other thing that's really fascinating about this is what does this look like? Because there's something else going on here. There's all these trees growing out of this, right? There's all these trees. There's hot magma. There's like sedimentation on top of that. There was a civilization that built here at one point. Everything used to be above ground, and where this tree was sawed off and was only a stump, new sprouts were coming up, very similar to how this looks here. And right now I'm basically just supporting Scum's theory, because this is not my theory. But I will tell you how and why this is leading into something that is my theory. So sometimes when a tree is killed from like the stem upward, little sprouts can shoot off from that tree stump if the root system is still alive and healthy enough, and it can look like this. It can look like that. Right? And so from what I'm looking at, that's kind of what's going on here. That's why there's another sprout happening there. It's kind of like wreathed around it. It's multiple stems coming from the same root system, right? And we see that happening over here. I think that's what's happening here too. But all of this was petrified. Why was it petrified? Well, I think, oops, I'm so bad at this. If we go back, I can't explain why there's a giant tree stump thing here. This could also not actually be something that is the case. Like, it could also just be that they wanted it to look that way for like artistic purposes, so that it that kind of looks like a tree stump, but that's not really what it is. It really is just like a mountain with a flattened top. But if we are tree people, and we are creating iconography that denotes trees, and we have some really big, massive trees. We have an Erd tree that is absolutely huge with a giant trunk. And then Scum Mage Infa was showing us on the back of this giant tablet is tree iconography. Do you see it back there? Like, I'm not going to be able to show you as well as he can, because I can't like look through things. But do you see that symbol on the back in the middle? That round symbol? In the middle of that is a tree, a giant tree. And if you look at Elden John, or as Scum likes to call him, Felden John, you see like roots coming out of his lower half. They were always tree people. When this area used to be above ground, which, by the way, like, look at what they're building out of. They're building out of what looks like limestone to me. It looks like the same kind of earth as It looks like the same material as this. Not the same material as this. Not the same material as this. So, wherever they were, whenever they were using that particular kind of material. If we go all the way back up here, this is more of like natural rock. This is more stuff that it doesn't look manipulated. It looks like that's just the way it is. It's weathered nicely. It looks naturally placed, and like that's just the way it is. But when you look over here, you see. Uh-oh, I haven't taken that down yet. I wonder how far it's gonna go. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to get to is from here to down there. Because of the way the trees are petrified, and it's a whole forest of petrified trees, and the way the stone is naturally displaced, like there's a lot of stone there that looks like it belongs there. So it was stone that was resting on top of something else. And then there's stone that looks amorphous, like it was once liquid, and it carried other stone to where it is at the moment. So what I mean by that is imagine, okay, you know how water is heavier than oil, and if you pour oil onto water, it like pulls at the top of it, and you can like look at like a thingy and see the oil sitting on top of the water. You know what I'm talking about? So what you could say about water in that case is that water becomes like a vessel or a vehicle for the oil that's on top of it, or a lubricant. This was a vessel, a vehicle, a lubricant that allowed for the stone on top of it to be displaced. The reason why this looks like what it should look like if there's millennia of natural stone just weathering and looking how it should when we're looking at a cliff face like this, and then all of a sudden there's this on top of it, is because this on top of it was moved here by that. And the reason why this is inside of that is because it came first. And this stuff kind of subsumed it. It consumed it. It was like pooling around it. What doesn't make sense to me is how this is happening in the cliff face, but it's also happening here on this rock that we're standing on. So then I start thinking, okay, so why could that be? There are a couple of reasons. The first one is that the people who created this game aren't putting as much energy into telling this part of the story, so there are inconsistencies, and at some points it's going to be shit's just buried in stone, and they weren't careful about making the stone make sense. Like, oh, this was liquefied stone and that's why this is buried beneath there. But why do we then have magma, volcanic magma, and then stone that's like naturally weathering? It's very confusing. So I think that the reason it's like that is because there are some what do you call it when someone's not paying attention and they do things like leave a Starbucks cup on the table in a medieval film? Continuity errors, I think is what they call that. That's what I think that is. That's the only thing that makes sense. So we know that the one thing that they're trying to tell us, which does make sense, is that the Rao ruins here are older than everything else we're looking at. That everything else we're looking at consumed the Rao ruins, not because of millions of years going by and like the world just building up around it, but because molten rock actually consumed it. Why else would you make the effort to put molten rock here and have the molten rock also consuming this? And it's poking out right there. They purposefully layered these different kinds of rock. So that's what I mean, I feel like I've lost you. I feel like nobody understands why I'm talking about this or like what the point is. The point is that I think that there was more than one cataclysm. And we know that already. We know that there were, for example, we know that there was an astal that fell from the sky here. We know that there was a giant golden meteor that fell from the sky here. We don't know if that's the same one that struck Faramazula and caused it to explode. But we know that one did, and the debris was shot way the fuck over this way from where Faramazula is now. That doesn't make sense unless Faramazula was like somewhere around here. Once upon a time. Perhaps the old tree was burned by the lava of Mount Gelmir. Yeah, perhaps. And, but we don't know. It's exhausting. And I feel like I'm drunk again, and I have not been drinking. But when you look at how unnatural the geology of this world is, and you look at like how Altus Plateau is the only bit of it that looks normal, and everything else is being thrust upward or downward, and it's in this weird spiral, and this is called the Land of the Lakes, but it's not a lake, it's a giant marshland. And then you have liquid hot magma bursting through weirdly in an area that shows me that it was a vessel that moved land. Then now we're talking about here. I guess I have to do a whole thing here. Guess we're going on a journey. I feel like me trying to explain it is probably super boring and confusing and feels like I'm trying to make a point, and then it's like kind of dying. But I'm hoping it'll make sense in a minute. Uh-oh. That was almost really bad. Oh. I feel like I'm probably gonna die here. I'm doing all these poor jumps. That looks too far down. finally made it. Do you see? Now we're merging from Scum's theory to Tarnished Archaeologist theory, where he spoke of how the Earth was once like liquid rock, and that is how these vessels got here. These big stone sarcophagi. I do have some... When I first heard the theory, I instantly supported it, because it supports my theory that the world, like the crust of the Earth, was unnaturally manipulated by some being, because this is more than just cataclysms. This is like, cataclysms don't behave this way. They don't create and sculpt the Earth. What they do is displace rock and cause, trends in sedimentation and create craters and molten rock and all this other stuff. But the molten rock is normally kind of localized. It doesn't turn the entirety of a planet into an amorphous geological anomaly. That's just not something that occurs. So instead, I'm looking here trying to make sense of that theory with the evidence that we have. Is there any evidence geologically in this area to suggest that this rock here was once liquid? It's really hard to tell, because the rock formation itself, it's not giving unnatural. Like, its weather patterns are relatively consistent. There's no evidence of like molten rock having been there at one point. So it's really hard to determine if the rock around us supports this story. So instead, we want to talk about the rock that we're on top of. And in order to see what that's like, since we can't dig, and I can't, take specimens and look at them under the microscope or anything like that to determine what kind of rock it is or how it got here, etc., etc., etc. But this is the rock that these vessels are inside of. There's two ways that these vessels could be inside the rock. The first one is that the Earth that we're standing on right now is newer than the vessel's arrival to this location, suggesting that this vessel is incredibly old, so old that all of this sedimentation, all of this weatherment, all of this earth literally built up around it, like an old ruin that eventually ends up being underground. Well, I guess it's either that or the boats fell from space. Quick aside, it's a really good metaphor artistically for them to design a map that looks like it was born of artificial geological cataclysm. It helps to heighten the dystopian political lands. It does. But the whole reason why I'm talking about this is because maybe they're not... I mean, I don't expect that the people that crafted this game are psychologists for Center Tarnish's sake, and in my sake, geologists, and in Tarnished archaeologists' sake, leaving archaeological clues because they are archaeologists. Like, I'm not suggesting that they are like some kind of mega genius that's capable of crafting a game that makes perfect sense in every way, including geologically. But when I first started playing this game, I recognized immediately from studying the stones that, or the earth rather, that we were playing on, that the rock formations are telling a story, that the world is amorphous, that this rock was displaced, that the rock formations are unnatural, and that someone somewhere for some reason made it this way. And even looking at the coastline where I can see like the cliff face of this rock structure, this all looks natural too. Which is telling me that however these things got here, it wasn't from molten rock, like bringing them here. It does make more sense that they fell from the sky. It really does. But this isn't the only place where these things are. So maybe they did fall from the sky in this location, but maybe the earth really did transport them in some other way in another location. And in order to discern whether or not that's the case, we would have to go underground and have a look. But as you can see, like the way that one is sticking out of the ground, for it to have stopped right there like that earth would just break away if it was once liquid and then solidified. It wouldn't hold on to that vessel. That's not like, I don't know, structurally sound. So maybe I'm going nowhere with this theory, really. Because it just doesn't make sense. So maybe they're hinting at things, but you also have to remember that it's a video game, and it's not going to make perfect sense in the realms of physics and geology and tra-la-la-la-la. It's like the use of harpsichord in the themes of Doctor Strange. It makes you think of the mirror realm magic kaleidoscope vibes through a Baroque architectural lens. It's a good motif for it. Yeah, and I mean, I do think that that's roughly what they're doing. But I think, like I said, I also think, like, there are inconsistencies from what I'm noticing. So oh no, it's a lobster. So part of me thinks that maybe my theory is kind of going nowhere a little bit. Because there's not enough consistent adherence to geological sensibilities in regards to physics and weatherment and those kinds of processes. But we are on this island now. Jeez. That's really strong. Is that because the cameo? It is because the cameo. And the talismans. The other talisman I'm wearing. And probably Rogia's gloves. Why, that's really strong. Anyway, so looking at the cliff face from this side, oh my god. It is molten rock. There's a layer of molten rock on top of it. Do you guys see that? It's molten rock that's weathered. There's a layer up there too. Do you see the distinction in the layer? It's like a thin layer on top that crusts over the edge, and then it's the... Well, holy shit. And do you see the distinction in... You can see it right there. In where the molten rock is and where the natural rock is. Do you guys see it? Maybe I'm not delusional. So Libre, come help me with this red dancer lady. Come help me, So Libre. Look how cute these are. I'm eepy. Oh? Yeah, no worries, So Libre. What's your idea, Reaver? Oh, holy shit. Do you see this pattern? I think that's just a texture thing. Yeah, that's just it. Wow, the quality of the texture in this location is very poor. Look at that ram. sleepy. What's your idea for later, Rainbow? Okay, sounds good. Sounds good, we'll put it on the list. I'm really EB. Uh-oh. I think it was all the geology just put me to sleep. Elden Ring devs downloaded a lot more of RAM. LOL. Danica says hello. Hello, Danica. Hi, Danica. Mummy's gonna go take a nap with you in a little bit. I am. I'm gonna go take a nap. Mummy's so sleepy.